everyone, this is Jedid, the Community Dietitian from the Davenport Perth Neighborhood and Community Health Center. Today we are going to cook a sweet potato coconut soup. This is a very delicious sweet flavored soup. This soup is for 6 adult servings and it will take about 30 minutes to prepare the whole soup. For the materials you will need the following. So first of all you need of course a soup pot about this size. Then you'll need a stove. I'm going to use this little camping stove. You will need a cutting board and a knife. You need a peeler for the vegetables. If you're going to wash the vegetables, you need a strainer. And then you need to open up the can of coconut milk with a can opener. To measure the spices, you will need 1 tablespoon, so that's 15 milliliters or 3 teaspoons, and 1 teaspoon so that you can measure out the different spices. And then at the end, when the soup is finished, you're going to blend the soup so that it has this smooth, creamy texture. So you can use either a hand blender. I have a hand blender here. I really like the steel stem of it because that way you're sure that the hand blender is not going to melt because the soup will be hot. You can also use a food processor or a other blender that you can use for milkshakes, right? Such a blender would work fine too. But make sure that you let the soup cool down before you pour it into a bigger vocal so that the hot air can escape. Okay, and then the ingredients, we will need 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Then we need 1 medium onion, so finely diced. You'll need 1 pound of sweet potato, that's about this size. So that you will peel and then you'll also dice that into small cubes. Then we have 1 pound of squash. You can use any kind of squash. I really like the sweet flavor of butternut squash. And so you'll also peel that and then dice it this small. If you have trouble peeling the squash, I recommend putting it in the microwave for about 3 to 5 minutes depending on the size. This size would go for 3 minutes, that would be fine. That way it will soften, loosen up the skin. Then we need 2 cloves of garlic over here, and then you'll have a root of ginger. Which you need to chop that up and have 1 tablespoon of the ginger. Then for the spices we have turmeric, 1 tablespoon, and then ground coriander and cumin. Each of those you need 2 teaspoons. And for cinnamon you need ½ teaspoon. Then we have 4 cups of stock. You can choose either chicken stock or vegetable stock. This one has no salt added, so that way you can choose however much of salt you want to add. You can also use a bouillon cube if that works better for you, and then add boiling water on that. 1 cube, you usually dissolve that in 3 cups of hot water. Okay. We need 4 cups of water or stock, so you'd have to add a little bit more than 1 cube. Then we have coconut milk. So this is not the coconut milk that comes in a carton because that's too thin. We want the rich creaminess of the fat of the coconut. So this one comes in a can, and we need 2/3 of a cup. For the garnish, we're going to add on top of the soup some cilantro. If you have trouble finding cilantro in the store, I always look at the label here. So it will tell you cilantro or parsley, right? So the next step is that we're going to prepare all of the ingredients. So we've already chopped up these vegetables, and then we're going to measure out these spices, and then I'm going to show you how you can chop up the garlic. So for the garlic, it is helpful if you have something that is flat, then your child can actually do this with you. So you put it straight horizontally on top of the garlic, and then your child just has to push down on it. So that way it will crack and then the skin loosens up and you can easily peel it. So once you have done that, you can chop off the edge, right? And then we're going to just chop it very finely. And the same thing with the ginger root. So for this, because it has a peel, You want to use the tip of eating spoon, and then just scratch it over the skin so you can peel it. It's easier than using a peeler. So this is sharp enough and it does the job well. And it's safe. Even your child can try this. Okay. So next thing, we will chop off about 1 tablespoon and then finely mince that. Remember, when you're measuring, you want to measure it flat, okay? So you have a knife and then it needs to be able to touch the edges without sticking out, okay? So this is about 1 tablespoon. Okay, so now that we have all our ingredients ready, we can start cooking. So what we'll first do is we will add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And we will put that in the soup pot. Then we will turn it on medium heat. And then we're going to add our onion and the spices. Okay, so we keep stirring this. We saute this for about 5 minutes until the onion is softened, the fluid comes out, and it mingles with the spices and with the olive oil. The great thing about these ingredients is that it is very good for our immune system. So for example, if I look at the turmeric, right, it has its bright yellow color that comes from the active ingredient called curcumin. And curcumin has been researched a lot. In the last 2 decades, it's been found that it can regulate the activity of immune cells in our body. And it can help enhance the way that our antibodies respond to invaders. So for example, to bacteria that enter our body or to viruses that get into our body. And the same thing is with onion and garlic. So both of those, they have a great amount of flavonoids and antioxidants. So they help to protect our body cells from getting damaged, which is a usual thing that happens in everybody's body, just a part of usual metabolic processes. It also contains sulfur, which has anti-inflammatory properties and helps to prevent cancer. Now the main source of fiber in onion and garlic is fructans. And fructans are also called FOS. So they are a prebiotic, and prebiotics, they help to feed the good bacteria that live in the gut, so inside our intestinal tract. And they help to strengthen the immune system. So those bacteria, we want to feed them with fiber so that they can help keep our immune system strong. So you can also find fiber, of course, in different vegetables, like in the sweet potato and in the squash. You can find fiber in whole grains. You can find fiber in legumes or in nuts and seeds. Those are all good options. So I really want to encourage you to eat lots of fiber. And if you eat more fiber than usual, I definitely want to make sure that you also know to increase the amount of fluid that you eat so that the fiber doesn't get stuck in your body. We want to make sure that it passes smoothly through. Let's have a look at the food guide. We'll talk a little bit about the food guide. This one is filled, right? That is filled with the onion and the squash. And then over here you can see starches can come from sweet potato. So what we're really missing in this meal to make it balanced is a protein source. So what we can do is we can either serve this soup with maybe some slices of cheese or with a handful of nuts. Other examples of protein are, for example, some roasted chickpeas, or maybe some cubes of tofu. Maybe you have some leftover homemade chicken. Those are all good options for you to increase the amount of protein. So next, what we will do is we're going to add the sweet potato, the squash, and we're going to add the ginger and the garlic. So just give that a stir. Then we're going to add our broth. So these are 4 cups or 1 liter of broth. lots of flavor from the spices and from the sweetness of the vegetable. And then we have to cook the sweet potato and the squash for about 10 minutes. They have to be soft because we need to be able to blend it into a puree. If it's not softly cooked after 10 minutes, then just let it sit for another 5 minutes. Okay, so bring this back to a boil. And then once it's back to a boil, you turn it to simmering. So you turn the heat a little bit down, okay, so that it continues to boil but at a lower heat. Good. So now that the sweet potato and squash have been boiling for about 10 minutes, they are soft. So I've just turned off the stove. And what we will do next is we will puree the soup, and we can also add in the coconut milk. So just make sure that it doesn't splash. Put it all the way down. And then you just move it little bits at a time. Soup is smoothly blended. I'm going to pour in the coconut milk. Now the fat of the coconut milk is floating on top, so it's important that you stir the can. And then this can has 400 milliliter in it, and we only need about 2/3 cup, so about a little bit less than half of the can. So we just stir that into it, and then we can taste it. Okay. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the roasted chickpeas on top. And then we will garnish it with some of the cilantro. So there you go. This is our soup. Enjoy!